Welcome back to the workshop. Now this video once again is brought to you by a tasty cup of coffee, and the mug that I'm using today is a clue to what we're going to be looking at. This is my nice Pac-Man mug with thermally reactive patterns on the front, so the actual all the maze dots, the ghosts, the little Pac-Man and everything, they all light up when this is full of a hot beverage. Unfortunately, I've drunk the coffee already. So, on with the video. Okay, so in this video we are going to be looking at the BBC Model B. It's a BBC microcomputer made by Acorn Computers and licensed by the British Broadcasting Corporation. This is the Model B and it's from 1981. There we are, close enough. Right, so let's have a look what we've got on the back of this thing. We've got an RF out for connecting to your television and tuning it into one of the analog TV channels, if indeed you've got a television that can still do that. So, RF out to tune into your telly, a composite video out, which for many years I believed was monochrome, or black and white. Until last year when I read something on the internet that shows me a little mod that I can actually enable the colour part of the signal just by changing the position of a jumper on the main board. So now that is a colour composite video out, and it does look a lot better than the RF out. Okay, we've got an RGB out which connects to an RGB monitor. Now, not a standard RGB, this is a TTL style RGB, so it's kind of a digital sort of RGB. So the monitors that were used with these were specific to that type of signal, and it was called TTL. So you can't really connect that to a regular RGB computer monitor or RGB television input without some modifications. Which I'm certainly not going to go into. They're too complicated, and but I do have a proper monitor for this, and I'll see if I can dig out a picture to edit into this video, because it's not in here at the moment. We've got an RS432. Not sure what that's for. Could be disk drive. I'm not really an expert because I've never had a disk drive with this thing. I've always used this one, the cassette input, and I have just hooked this up to a cassette deck for most of my life and loaded in games and programs through the cassette drive. Got an analog in port there, which is for a joystick. We have an unpopulated port. There's nothing in there, but it's for an, I think it's for an optional extra. It's labelled EcoNet. And underneath we have a whole bunch of other connections. Ah, there's the disk drive one. And we have an auxiliary power output. Now that comes straight out of the power supply module, which sits right under here. And that's the bit I'm going to talk about next. Okay, so I've removed the screws on the underside. This thing really does come apart easily. We can have a look at what's inside it. Now the bit I want to start talking about first is this here, which is the power supply. And if you were to buy one of these BBC Bs, you know, let's say on eBay or at a car boot sale or something, and it hasn't been used in years, which is a very likely chance, do not plug it in until you have done what I'm about to show you. Because these power supplies are known for pretty much exploding at this point in time, because there's a couple of capacitors in here which you have to change. If you don't change, they will blow up, and I've had two of these computers blow up. Now I'm talking from experience here. Even though I've had this thing all my life, I put it away for many years, brought it back out again maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, and it literally went up with a bang, and lots of horrible acrid smoke filled the house, and it was all from one little capacitor that just exploded. And then No sooner had I changed that one, but another capacitor exploded as well. So I'll show you which ones. Right, power supply lifts out of there. So it's a nice design. This is everything's very easy to get at. But look down here. There's the result of the exploding capacitor. And if you look where that was located, you can find out which capacitors they were. There were two. There's one here. Aha, yes. There's a little red one which is right down in the middle there, which that exploded too. So yeah, you have to change those out. In fact, I think the little red one down in there, let's have a look if we can, no, we can't really see it. You follow my finger right down in there. Can you see a little red capacitor? That's the first one that exploded, actually, and this is the second one. So both of those have to be changed out, or this unit could cause your house to fill with smoke and smell very horrible, and believe me, that smell doesn't go away easily. So yeah, they've got to be swapped out. Every single BBCB you should do this on. Somebody gave me another one of these computers a couple of years ago, and I just thought, oh, let's see if it works. Switched it on, bang, exploded, smoke everywhere. Same thing again. If you don't change these out, they're going to go bang. So yeah, as a word of advice, you can buy these capacitors online from places like CPC or even probably electronic supplies on eBay. Make sure you get exactly the right type, which was what these are, exactly the right type. I had this one in stock. This is an old, a new old stock that I had in one of my drawers. The rest of these caps, actually, there's no bulging. No bulging tops on any of these. They all seem to check out fine as well. And yeah, it's just these little filter caps, the one under there and this one here. Everything else seems to be good. Okay, so fitting this back in is surprisingly simple. I say surprisingly simple. It is when you haven't got a camera in your one hand. So yeah, that just slots back down in there. You have to lift the keyboard slightly. There we go, and it's fitted back in, and there's two screws to fit from the underside. Okay, so power supply is back in. I'm just going to pan across here to show you the composite video mod for this thing. Now if you look here, you'll see a small green jumper, and it goes between two pins. Now this is all that is required to make the composite output of this unit colour. And literally the jumper is not fitted from the factory. So all I've done, I've taken this little green pin out of a redundant CD-ROM drive. It was the jumper from an old ID drive that would tell the computer whether it was a master or a slave, or cable select. So I've just used that jumper, slot it onto those two pins that are right behind the composite video socket, and voila, you have colour composite video. I never knew that until this sort of about a year ago when I saw a video on YouTube, and I've had this thing since I was a kid, so yeah, it's taken me a long time to figure that out. Looks a lot better now. Okay, so I'm now upstairs in the spare bedroom. This is the retro room. Check out that lovely 70s carpet. Okay, and the lovely 70s television to go along with it, which is where we're going to be hooking up this BBCB. So, on the back, we're going to use the RF output, and this is the cable. It's got a phono plug or an RCA type jack on the one end, standard RF connector on the other. Now I've labelled, I don't know if I've got the TV in shot, here we go. I've labelled this button B for the BBC. Yay! Nothing works. Right. Make sure I've got the right cable plugged in. It does help to actually plug it in. Right, so as you can see, although not very well because the sun's shining through the window, that it is indeed working. Okay, so I've adjusted my camera's exposure here now, and we can see We do indeed have a picture on the TV. Now, the BBC-B does not output sound through the television, so I've had to, you can see there, I've had to plug in a dummy headphone cable, because without it, get a nice bit of buzz. You can, of course, do the easier thing and just turn the volume down, but I've got the volume set in a very specific place that I don't want to change it. I have the DIN plug here, which connects to the cassette socket on the back. Now this has 3 wires. Your load, your save, and the red one here with a slightly smaller jack plug on it is the remote control, which starts and stops the motor of the cassette deck. Now, this cassette deck doesn't have these types of connectors on it, so I've made up an adapter to a 2-pin speaker DIN. Inside this here is a little impedance matching circuit, little array of resistors, and that will plug into here. Chain and 2 speech marks. Hit play on the tape. Let's see what happens. Right, so far so good. It's loading a game called Croker. Let's see if you can guess what Croker is a rip-off of. Right, now, the vast majority of games for the BBC load with the chain command, except for this one, and maybe just 1 or 2 others, which Star Run. Okay, we'll try and load that video game in again. Star Run. Enter, hit play on the tape. And the game is loading. And there we go, it's loaded. Right. So AZ and MN are the controls. Good start, eh? Oh, you get the idea. One thing with the BBC, that there is your speaker. There's no volume control. I've actually stuck a layer of black insulation tape underneath the speaker grill to try and quieten it down. Yeah, there's no quietening this thing down, believe me. It's the way it was made. Yep, there we go, it works. Looks fantastic on this old CRT television as well. Really, the CRT TVs are the best way to play retro games because there's absolutely zero lag. There's no picture lag, no latency, nothing. And to be fair, it just looks so much better than playing these on an LCD TV. The picture is way better on a CRT for things like this. So, see you next time. Thanks for watching.